Is it ever okay to make gifts for a person living with dementia? This is Dementia Empowered, the podcast helping family caregivers navigate dementia care, overcome legal and financial challenges, and make confident decisions to support their loved ones. I'm your host, Patrick Cawley. Let's get started. Whenever this question comes up, one, I want to know, what is motivating the gift? What is the intention here? What are we trying to accomplish? But then there are at least three concepts. If you keep listening, we'll go through these concepts, but you want to be very clear on what is your authority and what is your duty when making that gift. Next, we're going to look at both benefits and drawbacks. There are benefits that probably motivated the question in the first place, maybe family relationships, and there might be benefits you're not thinking of, such as tax benefits, but you always want to consider the downsides. So we'll go through each of these in turn. When people ask me a question about a person who's maybe pretty far along on the dementia journey and the person is no longer managing their own money, they're not remembering birthdays, and so the question comes up from the family member. You know, if my mom could remember the birthdays of her grandchildren, it would break her heart that she's not giving them birthday gifts. So would it be okay if I made a gift from mom to her grandchildren? And not to mention that the grandchildren might be disappointed that they're not getting something from their grandmother on their birthday. So that's normally how the question is presented. But gifting, of course, takes many forms, and we might be talking large gifts, small gifts. It might be cash. It might be real estate. So I want to cover all of the bases here, but I'm assuming when I answer this question that it is somebody managing the money of the person living with dementia. Now, my first question is, what is your authority to go giving away that person's property? So are you just waltzing into the person's house and giving away their personal belongings? Are you using online banking access to transfer money out of their accounts? What are you doing here? What is your authority to be giving away what is not yours? And typically, where the authority comes from is a power of attorney, or maybe if it's a bank account that's inside a trust and you are the trustee, that's the source of your authority. That's a heck of a lot better than just helping yourself, because if you just help yourself with no legal authority to something that does not belong to you, then you are going to get acquainted with the local area agency on aging and adult protective services in particular, maybe even law enforcement. You might be on the wrong end of a civil lawsuit. So there are consequences to dealing in somebody else's property and not having the authority to do that. But let's say you have a power of attorney. This is good. This is legal authority. That's specifically what it's for. Manage my money, do things with my property that I could always do, and now I can't because I have dementia. So I'm equipping you. I'm giving you the authority in the law to do what I always did for myself. And the same would be true of a trust. It's going to give you specific authority, but you want to read the document. Go and find the paragraph that deals with the authority to make gifts. And it's going to define exactly what that authority is. So it might say the following class of people can be recipients of gifts from me even after I am cognitively incapacitated. Gifts can be made from me to the following people. So it will define it. And it might be very tightly defined to be certain people. It might be broadly defined, but you want to know, who can I give a gift to? It will also define how big the gifts can be. What's the value of the gifts? So I've seen powers of attorney that say, if I have an account in my name and I'm incapacitated, the recipient of a transfer of money can be my spouse in any amount, but anybody else, not so much. You know, there might be a very limited amount of value that can be transferred to anyone other than the spouse. So all of this is going to be written right into the power of attorney. Once you understand what is your authority to even make gifts, then you're going to understand who can I make the gift to, because that has to be right there in your legal authority, and what's the value of the gift that I can give to those named recipients or classes of recipients. And then after that, once you understand exactly what your authority is, so you don't get in hot water with law enforcement, Then you want to know, what is your duty? Because this is called a fiduciary duty, meaning you are acting in the best interests of the person with dementia. It's not what you think is a good idea. It's what is in that person's best interests. Now, sometimes that's easy to figure out and sometimes it's not. So the fiduciary duty in the power of attorney might specifically say you can make gifts that you know for a fact that I would want you to make because I told you or because I put it in writing. And very often you might see that the attorney who drafted the power of attorney document said, be consistent with my testamentary wishes. Well, what does that mean? That means you're not just looking at the power of attorney, you're also looking at the will, the last will and testament. In other words, be consistent with what my plan was for who inherits everything when I'm gone. If you go giving away the farm while I'm still alive, what does that do to my testamentary wishes, my wishes for what happens when I'm gone? This all goes into you figuring out not only your authority, but how am I acting in the best interests of this person? And sometimes it's not easy to tell. I mean, is it in mom's best interest to give a wedding gift to the granddaughter? Because mom certainly would have done that. Well, if that's part of a pattern, mom always gave birthday gifts, wedding gifts, Christmas gifts. Well, then I think you can probably justify that this is in mom's best interests, even though we never discussed it. But this is what I think is consistent with decisions that mom always made. What would an objective, reasonable person say about whether this is in mom's best interest? Whenever that comes up and people want to know, well, how do I know what an objective, reasonable person would say? Surely all of us reading the news are looking for reasonable people and we're coming up short all the time. But I tell people, think about it this way. If you were standing in a courtroom in front of a judge explaining your actions, how comfortable would you be? Can you state your rationale and explain why this is in mom's best interests? And do you feel okay about it? And do you think the judge will be okay with it? Well, then, if the answer is yes, you're probably on the right track. So all of that goes to your authority to make a gift of money that does not belong to you, belongs to the person with dementia, and the fiduciary duty, acting in their best interests. So now let's talk about what are the benefits, what are the drawbacks of making the gift? Well, you might be thinking this is a part of family harmony. This is just part of what mom always wanted, and it's part of my duty as the caregiver to carry out wishes that I think mom would have and what she would do. Okay, there might be less obvious benefits. Just about every state, maybe I'm overstating it, a lot of states have tax laws where when a person passes away, before the money goes from the estate to the beneficiaries, the people inheriting, there's tax taken out. They call it different things, estate tax. Sometimes it's called an inheritance tax, as it is in my state of Pennsylvania. And meanwhile, you might wonder, well, that's only what the person died owning. What about transfers made as a gift while they're still alive? Well, then states may or may not tax that transfer. So in Pennsylvania, we don't have a gift tax, but if you pass away owning the very same money, now money comes out and goes to the government. So sometimes giving money during life is part of a strategy. It's to lower taxes and keep more money in the family. And all of this is allowed by law. But now we are squarely in the ballpark of questions you should be going over with a professional, such as an elder law attorney, or maybe a financial advisor or an accountant, or maybe all three, because you don't want to step in it. You don't want to make a mistake here. But this might actually be part of a wise strategy where you are really handling your fiduciary duty because you're looking out for the best interests of your person with dementia, avoiding taxes and honoring the people in their life who they wanted to receive their money. What's a major downside? Now that I've gone through duty and authority and I've gone through some potential tax benefits, you might be avoiding estate tax or inheritance tax. What might be the downside? Well, a big one has to do with how we pay for long-term care in the United States. So when mom or dad with dementia goes to a care facility, it's very expensive. And one of the more common ways to pay for that care is the Medicaid program. And it goes by different names in different states because it's a federal Medicaid program, but every state carries it out in slightly different ways. So if you're in Massachusetts, it's Mass Health. In Pennsylvania, we call it medical assistance. It just goes by different names. And the rules are slightly different. But I'll tell you one rule that seems to be consistent in all 50 states except California, which is that when you submit the application, I want Medicaid to pay the nursing home $10,000, $14,000 every single month, they're going to look at a lot of paper. And they're going to be looking at financial records and tax records. And specifically what they're looking for is going back 5 years from the date that that Medicaid application goes in. Was there any month in the last 5 years where mom was giving away money? Because they don't want people giving away their money only to turn to the government and say, now I'm poor, pay for my care. That would defeat the whole purpose of the program. So they build in this 5-year window where you're not supposed to be giving away any money. Now, elder law attorneys can talk your ear off about strategies with gifting and how there are ways to fix gifting and not have a penalty period where you don't get Medicaid. Now, who's paying for the nursing home or for assisted living if it's available in your state? So you want to be very careful because if there's a lot of gifting and then mom or dad with dementia goes into a care facility, there might be a short or long period of time where Medicaid just won't pay for the care. And so now, I don't know, do they have any money? Are the adult children, maybe you, going to come up with the money to pay for the care facility? So that 5-year look back for Medicaid to pay for long-term care is a big deal. But the other big drawback too, and you have more of a sense of this, is when you become a dementia caregiver, boy, are there critics. Not only critics about how you're providing care. Are you attentive enough? Are you taking the person to do this versus that? Boy, you might encounter some people who have strong opinions, not that they're always willing to actually help at all, but they're going to criticize how you do things. Well, the volume on the critics goes way up when they might suspect or have their strong opinion, whether it's warranted at all or not, they're going to have opinions about how you're using mom or dad's money. And they don't understand anything about you're avoiding taxes. This is a wonderful exercise of your fiduciary duty. You're helping mom or dad keep more money in the family. Well, they don't see that. They just say, oh, I see you're taking mom on this trip and you're going with her. I suppose this is on mom's dime. And they sure get critical of that, not knowing that this is actually something mom has always done. So it's within your authority and your fiduciary duty. It's helping mom to keep more money to going to purposes that she would have left it to without money going in taxes. So you want to just be very careful and keeping very careful records. So not only to match up with what the will says eventually, keep records of these gifts, records of the gifts for Medicaid purposes, but records if anybody ever calls you out and says, I think you violated your duty, even if you had the authority to make the gifts, I don't think that was in mom's best interests. And when they start making questions about your fiduciary duty, that's a big deal. You want all the expenses, you want whatever you need to back up your decisions. So I think I've covered your authority and your duty, some benefits, whether it's family harmony or avoiding taxes, and some drawbacks. Medicaid imposes a penalty for gifting if mom or dad goes into a facility where Medicaid is paying for the care, and not to mention the critics who will come out of the woodwork back to fiduciary duty, saying you're not acting in mom or dad's best interests. These are all things to keep in mind when the question comes up, is it okay to make gifts on behalf of my mom or my dad who has dementia? I cover a lot of topics on Dementia Empowered. Legal concepts, navigating the healthcare system, financial challenges. These concepts are all connected in dementia care. Coming soon to my website, KeystoneElderLaw.com, is a self-guided course to help you put it all together in one place. Anytime and anywhere, I can guide you through a number of sessions to learn the care skills of dementia. If your family would benefit from coaching, send me an email at info@KeystoneElderLaw.com.